Oh, there we go. Okay, so we got the Sumner. Do we get the Graham? Let's see, Graham. We got the Graham. So we got past Spencer and we're on the Sumner, right? Yeah. And I really focus on this morally corrupt and survival of the fittest, and they start doing the hierarchy of races or hierarchy of people, and that got the races, sex, and also by class. And it gives kind of a scientific background to it. So let's go and get going from here. So we got 4. So we got get to here. Is that why we were quit? Does this look right for everybody? So the marketplace is like the wilderness. And so in the market, and that includes your business, but also wages. Remember, wages are decided in the marketplace. And if you have a high wage or low wage, that is decided on your ability to compete, aka natural selection, aka survival of the fittest. And so on this point then, if they're wealthy, they must be superior, they must be on top, they must have some kind of secret ability that most people don't have to get rich, also combined with this whole moral thing. They must work hard. They work a lot harder. And sure, there might be hard work or not hard work. Things are very complex. There's a lot of different variables. But this, you can see, is really going to appeal to those who have wealth, because it implies I'm better. And I don't have to worry about it because I'm supposed to be. I don't have to worry about how I got the money. And so the market is the wilderness. And don't forget, the market is not part of the environment. It was not created in nature. It was created by humans. We make these decisions. And we could argue that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think there's definitely good things and bad things about it, like everything else in the world. But it's created by humans. So next, therefore, a social hierarchy, for some reason I capitalized the H, but not the S. A social hierarchy is natural. Now, some of you already know, like, a little bit of European history or Western Civ, there's always been like a king and people on top. There's this hierarchy. That hierarchy, this aristocracy is part of the US. And we talked about the positive good theory. But now the reason why we're saying this is natural is now we have scientific biological proof because of Darwinism. We have this proof. It's science-like. It's sciencey. This gives a scientific justification, not I'm on top because I'm supposed to be, and don't mess with me. I'm stronger. I have more money, or whatever it might be. Here's why we get to important. You talk whatever, people can believe their own personal beliefs. But now we're talking about the rules, the laws, the system that will be created. Because the system that will be created will affect what we are today. That's why this is important. It's not just some abstract philosophy. It's how does this transcribe to the interaction of people, aka politics. So government intervention in inequalities, in the market, in wealth, in how people live, on product safety, on any of these, it's futile. It's worthless. Any government intervention, let's say, to help poor and impoverished people who can't afford the education to maybe move up, that's futile. Won't do any good. And the reason why is this: those on bottom are supposed to be on the bottom. They're morally corrupt. They don't work very hard. And if you give them money, what will they do with it? Remember the positive good theory? What would happen if the slaves were free? You remember that? Remember that, the positive good theory? What will happen? 2 things will happen. Yeah, they're like savages and destroy everyone else or destroy themselves, because they'll turn to vice. And so the point is, they'll either they'll get that money and they'll blow it on alcohol. They'll blow it on gambling. They'll waste it on everything. They're a bunch of, then they would have said drugs. Today they say drug addicts. They'll just blow it on that. And sure, some people do. This might shock you. Wealthy people do it too. It's just, and people in the middle, everyone does that. But the idea is they're morally corrupt, can't give them money. If you try to change the market, oh sure, there might be people on the bottom who might move up, and you might want to do a couple things to help them there, but no direct aid, because they will waste it. Yes.
Like lots of, they still want the government to give money to the government.
Exactly right. This, it dovetails quite nicely. Yeah, use dovetail again. It dovetails. Who watches? I got some biology stuff. You would not have believed how impressive. We're scaffolding. Okay, I'm making fun of education. All right, so then you're so right here, because unless no government invention, unless you help whom? You help those who are meant to succeed. That's to succeed, to leave the union, to succeed. Those who are already on top, those who you should help, because they know how to create more wealth. And like anything else, might be elements of truth, elements of not true. But you help people who are already rich, so then they create more prosperity. Don't help people on the bottom because they'll just waste it. Help the people on top. And so this is where government rules. So for example, if you're taxing people, make sure you tax poor people more, because they'll just waste the money anyways. And tax wealthy people less, because then they will have more money to build prosperity. So this is why it's important. We can talk about this philosophy. We'll get to one more part in just 1 second. But this is why it's important, because it's going to have long-term effect. We see it through today. Yeah.
That you pay this guy this much money to make things.
Well, you never know what they actually believe. You know, people always say anything. But yeah, he had a lot of money for some of the love. Carnegie loved and JP Morgan loved him. Yeah. And what's that? And this goes on to this day. You know, I mean, people pay. It's a real problem in the economics profession, for example, today. And so with that, so there are going to be two big panics, 73 and 93, two massive depressions. And in 73, there was a real thing. Okay, we got to help working people. And how do we provide shelter and home? I mean, what do we do? In 93, social Darwinism had taken over. And you see this all the way up to the very height of government. President Cleveland is that, no, there should be no aid because they'll just waste it. And there was a big shift in just 20 years. And when I'm saying this is going to go on. You see this kind of thing in the Great Depression. And so this is big. And yes, you jumped the gun, but that's exactly right. This is laissez-faire. No government intervention in the market, in wages, in quality of homes, and how people live, but government aid for the world. And don't forget, if there's laissez-faire competition, you're helping big by definition, just because of economies of scale. And one more thing, take this to the next step. You're doing this in class. Isn't it an easy step to say race? If they're the worldwide trade market, why is Britain doing better? Must be color of skin. Why are they able to dominate and conquer other countries? Color of skin. Why is the United States able to take the West? Color of skin. And now they can say, no, we're not doing it because we just want slave labor or whatever. No, that's science. There's supposed to be hierarchies and people on top and people on the bottom. Remember I showed you those things, or I talked a little bit about, I had the New South, so I talked about, Jim Crow and racism, the height of racism. I said they have back races. That's all came about of social Darwinism, all of them. Darwin would fight for the rest of his life against this. And we'll come back to it. Social Darwinism was a big deal. It would become the dominant philosophy in much of the world by 1900, and is almost certainly the dominant philosophy today. People have elements of this all over. All of us have probably looked at somebody who's not doing as well, and one of your first thoughts might be, oh, they must be this. And sure, they might be. I don't know. Everyone's different. But that automatic thinking, oh, whatever happened, you're not doing well in school, you're impoverished, being kicked out of home, whatever it might be, it must be this. And I bet every one of us have been in that situation, thought that, or felt guilty about that. And that kind of stereotyping someone without knowing the complexities of it is kind of social Darwinism. So it's pretty powerful. And I repeat, we're all susceptible to all sorts of things. So I'm making no moral judgment. And so we'll jump right into the gospel of wealth. This goes to the next step. What about those people who have money? Andrew Carnegie was very worried about going to heaven. He was very worried. And he was worried that how he got rich might be showing that he is somebody who is destined to be punished in the afterlife. But he really liked social Darwinism. He really liked it. He liked the idea. It seemed to justify what he was doing. It was getting or cutthroat competition or treating workers in certain ways without guilt. He wanted all this without guilt. And so what he decided was this. He's not alone in this, but he popularized it. So it's always associated with Carnegie. Wealth is good. It is God's blessing. And this goes back to a Puritan ideal. This goes back to even Columbus was kind of thinking about this. So it affected all forms of Christianity in the European exploration and colonization of the West, of the Western Hemisphere. But it's not blessing. That's how God is showing. And there's a lot of emphasis on wealth. So that's good. So how we get wealth, that's fine. But then what do you do with the wealth? You could build gold gilded carriages and ride around to mansions, which he, of course, did. But also, you must do something good with it. And so that's the gospel of wealth. However you got it, but then do something good with it. And this kind of charity is called philanthropy. A philanthropist is charity, but it's directed charity. It's decided by the person giving. It's not what you might be thinking. You give money to an organization to decide how to best use it. No, this is Carnegie will decide what's best for society. And he knows because he's really, really rich. Therefore, he knows what's best. And so, for example, Carnegie would give money for a few people to go. This one actually shows it back in his where he immigrated from Scotland for some people to go to free university. But the big thing Carnegie would do after he sold Carnegie still, yes, it's not Carnegie, it's Carnegie. I really try to remember to say it correctly. Say it incorrectly. He gave, in today's dollars, billions of dollars for libraries. He gave for opera houses. He also built one college on his own and then other colleges. So he gave all of this directed aid. He will decide where it goes because he knows best. So there's an element of that social Darwinism. I'm not just going to give you better wages or no. I will decide what's best for you. And he made it very clear. This is from his own, that's his own. He wrote this, he probably put his name to an essay somebody else wrote. That's a controversial about this. But it shouldn't go to people who are on the bottom because they're slothful, they're lazy, they're drunkards, and they'll just waste the money. So, not going to give you money, but if we build a library, that might help your children if they're capable of moving up, if they have those gifts, that'll give them that example. So, for example, when he destroyed the Homestead Steelworkers Union, fired many of the leaders of the union, blackballed them so they couldn't get another job, cut their pay by about a third. He built them an opera house to be cultural development, but not higher wages. And this is a tough one. It really is tough because obviously they don't have to give anyone. And libraries are a really good thing. But at the same time, it's I will tell you what's best for you. And we see this today. The best example I can think of is Bill and Melinda Gates. They give money, they've totally, because of their wealth, they've totally changed education. Has anyone heard of a thing called Common Core? That's Bill and Melinda Gates. They're the ones who did it. And they went to the Obama administration, and the Obama administration said, hey, this is great. They didn't even have a program yet. And they mandated it for anybody receiving federal money. And I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't a big fan of Common Core. Oh, there's good things about it, like anything else. But they just mandated. That was Bill and Melinda Gates. And then they later on in 2019 said, you know, it failed miserably. And we're still with it. So they moved on to something else. I just find that fascinating. We should win the lottery and do that. Okay, moving on. Then I decided to show you a dog with a pipe. For no real reason, except I was looking for something else and I found a picture of a dog with a pipe. And that was a real problem by the 1890s. Dogs were hoarding all the tobacco. So let's get to the opposite reaction. There's a movement that would grow, and you see these before the industrial revolution, but you really wouldn't see socialism until after the Industrial Revolution. And it never really had a solid grounding until after 1848. And the best way to look at it is the anti-social Darwinist program. They believe classes are not natural. We do not need to have the big divide between the classes. Classes are not natural. So unlike social Darwinism, they say there should not be people on top. And so it's going to be the socialists who would also say not only should we not have difference between the classes, but it'd be the socialists who would fight for equal rights but based on color of skin, and equal rights for men and women. It'd be socialists. And we'll get to that. When we get to in April, we talk about the civil rights movement. There'll be a big attacking of Martin Luther King. He's a communist because he believes in, he actually said, race mixing. So this is a pretty, so this comes back from this post-industrial revolution. And what they want is a classless society. Now, not everybody equal, but no big gap between the classes, or maybe just one class, and equal economic and political rights. So a true socialist, somebody who really believes in socialism, is full democracy. Democracy politically, democracy in the workplace. And yes, I'm not exactly sure how that would work, and socialists bitterly disagree about this. They fight themselves more than they fight other people. So socialism is an interesting thing. I guess any group would do that. You get the same thing, you get a bunch of libertarians or fascists together too. But, you know, so things like economic rights, that's why socialists would lead the fight for an 8-hour workday. That's socialists. All right, and then because now work has totally changed because of the Industrial Revolution, you're not longer working for yourself, you're working for a wage, and the wage system for somebody else. And the same thing here about, you know, leisure time for all. This is employer's liability, aka if you heard of workers' comp, workers' compensation. That's what socialists would fight for. And things like that. And what does this really mean? Workers somehow control the means of production. Remember, means of production is capital. Once again, I'm not sure what that means either. Does that mean like labor unions where workers have a voice in how the capital is used, whatever, you know, a factory or whatever it might be? Or does it literally mean the workers take it over? Or does it mean the government takes it over for the workers? I mean, socialists disagree about this. And we're going to have all these extremes. And there are elements of socialism, but it never really took hold in the United States for lots of reasons. Anti-monopoly did. You know, they're very much opposed to monopoly. And the big thing is socialists they talk over and over again about it. Now, there are socialist countries that are very democratic. Norway, for example. And then there are countries that would claim to be socialists that are not democratic at all. The Soviet Union would not do this. And then China claims to be communist, and they're nothing. It's wow. Of course, now since China makes almost everything, they're watching this, I'm sure. I'm that happy. Yeah, did you wave? So part of the economic background of this is going to come from a book it's more of a pamphlet called The Communist Manifesto. And the first part is actually pretty sound economics. You know, about explaining what's happening with this early capitalism. And now they're obviously writing it in the way that they think it's negative, but whatever. You can agree or disagree. It's pretty sound economics. It's written by Karl Marx, who was a reporter, and turned out to be, he was a, you know, before there was any economist, he was a pretty solid economist in a lot of ways. And Frederick Engels, who actually ran a business, he was a capitalist, AKA they call him bourgeoisie. And there they are with their wives, and they wrote this manifesto. The first part, and it's also really easy to read. So that makes it so popular. You know, things that are easy to read, or, you know, I can understand this. And what they laid out is this basic idea. Now, this is before social Darwinism, but you can imagine how then with social Darwinism, this is a good foil to it. And so all society is class from the beginning of time. So the big men who had the land in ancient Sumeria and the laborers, or the feudal knights who coerced and extorted money out of the peasants, the serfs, or master slave, or for that matter, the new one, the capitalist, he called the bourgeoisie, and labor. And there's a heck of a lot more of these, but they own the capital. And this always is class struggle. The difference is now labor is all working in one place, so they're together. They're in one group, kind of organized. And what he said was, every one of these systems, those on top exploit the work of those on the bottom. So we're just talking about this capitalistic idea. They exploit their workers. How? The wage system. Remember, the wage system has nothing to do with profits. If profits go up, wages can still drop. Wages and profit have nothing to do with each other. So what they're saying is, workers, remember I told you, they fought against this. Workers are like, oh, I work harder and I don't get any of the profit from my productivity. It goes to them. And that's what he said with the exploitation. Basically, the productivity of the worker, they don't get it. It goes to somebody else. And this was a complaint of the wage system. Now, let's be very clear. Who's going to take the risk and invest in the capital if they don't get the profit? So the point is, this is true in a way. But like I just told you before with the social Darwinism, it doesn't tell you the whole story. Things are complex. It also depends where you're at, doesn't it? What side you're on, or what side you think you're going to be tomorrow. And so that's what he said. And so what he believed is there'll be a revolution. And that's a picture of Marx taken later on in life. And that's going to be the most famous picture of Marx with the big beard. And Marx believed there'll be some kind of revolution where now organized laborers, called the proletariat, will rise up. Now, this could be a violent revolution. And he said it in 1848 when he wrote this with Engels. There were revolutions all over Europe. In Paris, in what is now Germany, and Austria, and Hungary, and Poland, and Russia. I mean, just all over the Europe revolutions. So we just assumed it would be a violent revolution like what's happening. As he got older, he started saying it could be in the ballot box, AKA a revolution in how people vote or change the Constitution or something like that. So it might change everything, but a revolution in the form of government. And we have that here. Remember, we have, it wasn't, Shays' rebellion, but the Constitution was a revolution that kind of curtailed democracy. And then we had the growth of democracy, kind of a revolution in the 1830s with Jacksonian democracy. And then we had a revolution after the Civil War, the 13th, 14th, the 15th Amendment. That was a revolution, even though the war was over when those were passed. So that's what he was talking about there. But you can imagine, what side are you on? What?
Oh, I see it.
Go right here. Right by the cauldron. I'll let you grab it. I'm gonna watch. And with that, after the revolution, he predicted a dictatorship of the proletariats. And he wasn't thinking like a dictatorship of iron rule. He thought the proletariat, which meant laborers. This comes from the Roman Republic. Some of you might know this. Roman Republic, the lower class were called proletariat. The upper class were called plebeians. So the proletariat were the workers. Actually, some but the proletariat. And this would be like, okay, we will train everybody. We will set it up to the conditions where there's going to be perfect socialism. And this is where all of you should go, wait a second. pretty actually sound economic thinking. And we could argue about the merits of that, which way to go. And then a revolution, okay, well, okay. And then a dictatorship? What do dictators do? Do dictators normally give up power once they have it? So the thought was, there's exploitation, class problem, revolution, dictatorship. When the people are ready, perfect socialism, perfect democracy. And as we know it, eventually states would go away. Money as we know it would go away. And religion as we know it would go away. Because Marx believed that religion was used by people in power to keep them on top. This is why it's going to be going to the 20th century to talk about godless communists. Marx was much more complex about that. But all this would fade away. Isn't this kind of magical thinking? Revolution! Perfect society. And one more thing. Here, do dictatorship give up power? They like power. So they will be dictators until the people are ready. So for example, in 1917, in Russia, when the Industrial Revolution was literally just beginning there, during Middle World War I, it was caused by the war. There was a communist revolution by a small little tiny group of Bolsheviks who were communists, and they overthrew the Russian, it was a republic, so a Russian republic, and they created a dictatorship of the proletariat, and then there was a bloody, awful civil war. When the Civil War ended, then they said, okay, when we are ready for perfect socialism in our state, and when were the people ready for democracy and rights and freedom? They never gave up. And they held on to it, and they created their own little class of leaders on top. They talked all about socialism, but they created a monstrous totalitarian state that would die in 1989. And so it's funny, I have the Soviet flag, someone gave me that, and it's just so funny, it's died in 1989, and the hammer and the sickle were farmers and workers together, and what turned into a monstrous state. Same thing happened in China. Same exact thing. Now, countries that became more socialist, like Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland, those Scandinavians, but to a lesser degree, Germany, France, they had a revolution in their constitution, or in Germany's case, we had a little war and we had to recover. But this is the Communist Manifesto, and at great impact. But I'm going to show you one more picture really quick. So this is the basic economic idea. Almost all socialists believe in this somehow, maybe not the revolution, but I just thought this was amazing. So I found this, and there's Marx with a beard. This is the only picture I've ever seen of Marx without a beard. So anyone who's seen pictures of Marx, which my guess most of you have, probably never seen him without a beard. He looks so weird without a beard. I was like, wow, I had to show you Marx without a beard. So with that, Marx ended up moving to this beautiful valley, and he built a yurt and lived there for the rest of his life. Who's been in the yurt? Who's been in a yurt that a grizzly bear attacked? Didn't really attack, just came and scratched the side. That'll wake you up. We think it was a grizzly. It might have been a black bear. If you ever run into a bear, they look 1,000 feet tall. Bears are scary. They're cool. So there's so this is going to become what we call the left wing. And I'll spend the left wing in just 1 second. But these are more socialist, anti-social Darwinistic. The more moderate socialists, they thought they could do this with a political process, like strong labor unions, like the Knights of Labor, which is going to form after the Civil War, that had some socialist ideas. There's one big union that will create powerful workers who politically will be able to alleviate some of their class problems. And out of that tradition would become Eugene Debs, who's head of the American Railway Unions. You notice that's a strong connection with labor unions. And Deb will become the leader of the Socialist Party in the United States. The Socialist Party was a pretty big third party by 1912. And he got 1.5 million votes for president in 1912 and did quite well. and things began to blow up in World War I. He opposed the war, World War I, very vocally. The United States entering that, he'd be arrested for speaking out against the war. Wars lead to repression. And he would get over 1 million votes from a prison cell in 1920. And so socialism was pretty popular, but not overwhelmingly popular, but had great influence. Socialism would, any kind of socialist party died by, I would say, the 50s because of the Cold War. There's a little bit of a burst of some very moderate socialist feeling in the last 3 or 4 years. I'd say maybe 6, 7. So next, more radical are the communists. Now this is far too simplistic. We're doing this pretty quick. But the communists, they believe there's probably, first off, they saw this as an international struggle against capitalists and their desire for empire and wealth, the imperialists. And they said there's going to have to be some kind of revolution. And the revolution has got to happen now. And there'll be a fight. Now, it might still be a fight in battles over the new constitution, for example, in a country, but it's international. And they see it as the capitalists are going to fight. For them, they thought, yeah, they're going to fight, but we can do this through just the power of the people organizing, promising a better life. And then the most radical, who are the most radical socialists? The anarchists. Anarchists believe they can create perfect socialism. Now, if you ever meet a person who says, I'm an anarchist, let's blow up everything, run away from them. They're a psychopath. That's not what anarchists believe. Anarchists, they believe that socialism is the ultimate goal. But a couple things about it. Any hierarchy leads to a class. If you have a group of people and say, okay, we're all going to be anarchists, but I'll be in charge, you just created a class, and that class is the person on top. And so the idea of anarchists is we're all going to be equal here. We'll make decisions together, and either decisions together as a group or individual action. It won't be one person in charge. And so anarchists would look at what happened in the Soviet Union and say they're horrible. I should add, moderate socialists hated communists, and communists hated moderate socialists. They despised each other. So moderate socialists, called social democrats in Germany, despised communists in Germany. And that fight there would help lead to Hitler taking power. If they would have unified, like, hey, we agree on some things, Hitler would not have taken power. Or let me rephrase that. Hitler would not have taken power, at least the way he did. So with that, so they want to blow up the existing order. They want to blow it up. Blow it up. Now, how do you blow it up? They want to show how inadequate it is to care for people, to protect, to give them security, and make them insecure. Now, people like Emma Goldman, who's right here, she immigrated from Russia, and she was a naturalized citizen. She believed we could do this by showing how the system has left so many people, workers, average people, living day-to-day lives, insecure, fearful of the future, fearful to do anything, fearful for their children, and we could show how inadequate that is. But then a lot of them said this is slow. It takes too long. They want propaganda to show it doesn't work of the deed. And what's the deed? Revolutionary terrorism. And that is why we get this picture right here of an anarchist. It's also maybe a labor union. And it says, kill the law, no God, no law, down with capital, destroy all property. And what they said is, let's commit individual acts of revolutionary terrorism to show that society cannot function, the government cannot function, the laws do not matter. We will blow it up, and out of it will come perfect socialism. Do you see a problem in that? Let's blow everything up, and perfection will appear. So there's an element of fantasy land here. Goldman did not have it. And so there's going to be revolutionary terrorism all over. On the right is a bomb put in the Spanish Parliament. The next one is in an opera house in France. ID being opera would be mostly wealthy people. Here is the attempted shot but not killed assassination of the Premier of France. There were hundreds of assassination attempts and bombings. Here is the Tsar of Russia blown in half, literally, Tsar Alexander I by an anarchist. They rolled a bomb under his carriage, it exploded, and he was blown up in it. And literally, this is true, his lower half, his torso was blown apart, blown off. And he survived his upper torso for nearly a day, which I still can't even imagine them. But other brutal attacks all over the world, anarchist attacks. And this is important because there's this feeling. Remember, I told you there was fear of revolution? Bombing all the way up to World War I, including an anarchist killing the president of the United States right here. In 1901, William McKinley. One of the biggest terrorist attacks in American history will be an anarchist bomb outside of Wall Street in 1920. And so this shows you how this kind of blew up, this kind of insecurity. I should add that, did it work for the anarchists? No. Terrorism has a real problem. These kind of attacks didn't show people that the government was inadequate. It made them scared of the people throwing the bombs. And this allowed people who did not like things like an 8-hour day to say, look at all these radical socialists, communists, or bomb throwing anarchists. And that became a way to attack. To say anybody, let's say you want better working conditions. Oh, you must be a bomb throwing anarchist. And we all know who bomb throwing anarchists are because they're literally bombing people. So let's get very quickly to the political spectrum. And I'll talk to you about that again. I know I've mentioned this once before. One of the problems with doing this for a very long time and also teaching free American history class, and I go through a lot of history and politics and stuff in my little bit Western Civ, but not so much yet this year, but special topics we do. But let's review that political spectrum. You've all heard on the right and the left. So let's see, this is your right. So the right, and so this is usually more, they'd be more hierarchies, fascism would be on this side, dictatorship, anti-democratic on the right. This is your left. This is more where you're going to find more pro-democracy, more, and think about different era. Pro-democracy was crazy left-wing in 1850. So, things shift, obviously, but more socialist, more communist, anarchists are the furthest to the left. And that is the political spectrum. And that comes from the French Revolution. So hopefully this is a review. But in the French Revolution, in the first General Assembly, those who were for the king and the aristocracy, they sat on the right side. So they sat over here facing the podium. And those who wanted more rights for people, including democratic rights, including equality between the sexes, the furthest over they sat on. So that's where that comes from. And the big teller about left, and there's a real divide on the left, there's a divide on the right too. It's social Darwinism. Social Darwinism by the 20th century will decide where you're at to this day. The more you believe in social Darwinism, the more you're kind of leaning to the right. The more you're against social Darwinism, the more you're leaning to the left. And remember what I told you, we have elements of both of that. And for most people, it's kind of goes back and forth. Some things are more right or left, it goes back and forth. And so generally today, in the United States, you have more radicals, pretty close to the middle. But our middle is actually much further to the right than, let's say, Germany. Still, the middle. And the political parties, when I was your age, were much more divided, right and left. Now, which party would be more right today? More. There's elements involved. Which political party in the United States today? Yeah, Republican. And which parties look a little bit more to the left? But not completely. And they merge and they go back and forth. You see people believe that. And so you go to a place like Germany, there are people more on the right who actually would be like Democrats here. So it just everything shifts. But that's where we get that term. We will come back to that. Oh, so economically, laissez-faire and conservative economics, that's a little bit more to the right. because they believe a little bit in social Darwinism. You know, people on top, they know what they're doing. Let's give them money. So, but the communists, they devoured themselves. And so this famous painting by Blake of Neptune devouring his son, or this is Greek mythology. Just go with it. I just love the painting. All these people on the left fought each other so much that made them very vulnerable. But let's get to something really big. The Panic of 1870. So the Panic of 1873, you have these different points of views happening. We've talked about it. But let's give it real world situation. Back to, okay, kind of did this, you know, what's going on, the generalities of the Industrial Revolution, real life. So post-war, there was a small depression after the war. Economy started to get better. And then 1873 was an economic disaster that shook the entire world. So it started with a couple different things. First off, over speculation. People were buying real estate, stocks and bonds, and all these new technologies like railroad and telegraph and other new steel production. And people were over speculating. Also in real estate, there's always real estate speculation. Remember I told you about a bubble where the prices get higher and higher and higher? And everybody's thinking the bubble's going up. It's going to go on forever. People started borrowing money to buy land or buy railroad stock or invest in new companies or new technology. And the price kept going bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and growing. More than what its actual value would be. You lived through one massive bubble in your lifetime. That was the real estate bubble when you were born. That was going on then. Destroyed the world's economy in 2008, 2009. To a lesser degree, there was a real estate bubble, but it wasn't. It appears to be not near as big. That happened in 2021, 2022. Because it didn't affect many people, but an example of that would be like cryptocurrency. Blowing up, but had no real value. And then it also been dropped by a third, like overnight. There's still a few people in there investing in them, and there's a name for them. We'll come back to that. But overproduction. There's also overproduction, and especially in railroads. All these railroads just started building like mad, and they're borrowing money to build. And the problem is, you know, sure, the railroads might be used down the road, but in the early 1870s, it was pretty clear they were building railroads before there was marketing. Companies weren't making money. And so what happened is overnight, you have railroads, all of a sudden, they overproduced, they made too much, and railroads started going out of business, and then the bubble burst. But then something else happened. Congress, to try to deal with this convoluted financial system, passed the Coinage Act of 1873. And the Coinage Act took this system that the United States had, which really wasn't even a system, that goes out of the disruption of the Bank of the United States. We had greenbacks, currency, silver money, and gold money. And then it said, okay, we're going to coalesce this into everything will be based upon, and I didn't write this down, put down the gold standard. All based upon gold. Overnight, all the silver coins and paper currency dropped in value like a rock. And what happened to the value of gold? Went up. At the same time, when the bubble burst, stock prices dropped. When there's overproduction, prices dropped. Overnight, like a wave, deflation swept through the country. So prices drop for everything. Now, you as a consumer might think, prices dropping, that's great. But if prices drop, that means companies can't make money. That means they can't pay back their loans. That means they go out of business. That means their workers are fired. And who cares how low prices are? If you have no money, it's too hot. And overnight, and this spread throughout the world. So here's the Wall Street when the stocks crashed. It actually started prior to the recession in 1872, the downturn. And this will lead to a massive worldwide depression. Bank panic, and over 18,000 businesses shut their doors. That means massive unemployment. And you can imagine how bank panic worked. If, let's say, there were no rules on banks, and banks were loaning money like mad because they could charge high interest, and they thought this bubble would go on forever. Let's say this half of the class all had money in bank A. And that bank went broke. You put your savings in that bank. All of a sudden, deflation hit, the financial panic, no one could pay back their debts, and that bank was open on Tuesday, and on Wednesday it shut down. All of you had a savings account in it. What happened to your savings? Gone. You had a piece of paper said that the bank owes you money. Did you put a savings account there? It's worthless now. It's worthless. Same thing if you had stocks and all of a sudden the stock price is tumbling. Worthless. Now, over here, you have you have your money in another bank. You can trust me, right? I'm still going. But you saw your neighbors, their bank collapse. And what is your first instinct? Ah, it's fine. Let it ride. No, what are you going to do? And you know, all of you are going to probably go right to the bank. So it's a panic. Who can get there first, get their money out? Because as a bank, I don't keep your money. I loan it out right away. Banks operate with the idea that everyone who has a savings account or all their liabilities won't come at once. So even healthy banks, like Partridge Bank, would go under. And that means any other banks, they shut their doors. They're scared of loan money. Overnight, money just freezes. It's just no one wants to do anything. And that's why you get all these businesses shut their door. Businesses need loans. Even healthy businesses, if they can't get money to operate, so they get their money, they go under. We saw this in 2009 during the crash. And that means then, if you have this happening, all of a sudden there's no demand. No one's buying anything. And so companies, even healthy companies, have to lay off. And not only that, soon you're going to have over 20% unemployment. Approximately, we're not sure. That means even less demand. That means even more layoffs. And those who do have jobs will go down and profits will drop. Now, some companies will still make money, but their profits drop dramatically. And everyone is scared. During a boom, everyone is spending like mad. All of a sudden, everybody's afraid. And this spread to every country in the world. And the bad part was, here's the financial panic. The worst years of the bank closures was 1877. You have this slow motion down. Same thing happened in the Great Depression. The Great Depression, the financial panic began in 29. The worst year was 32. I'll tell you a little bit about Hitler and tell you about the communists and all that. A little bit. You know, this is an American, it's important to tell. Good job today.
Thank you.
There will be a quiz tomorrow, I promise. No more than 9 questions. 89. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see ya. Goodbye. See you tomorrow. Well done today.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, are we allowed to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's oh, just like that, except it's like.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, the thing was, I talked to Robin Bates. And I'm gonna get a big one. That's so expensive. Yeah, I have one. Yes, it's like a puzzle. Pretty amazing, it's cool. But like one piece dog, you know. But yeah, this was our Western Civ, so we're not gonna see what you made that, or anything else like that. Where's your, oh, yeah. There it is. On the ground. Raggedy. You know, he never quits, he never gives up, never quits smiling. Let's just put it. So I'm gonna give you the first, I started making the quiz on section 1, and it's gonna be big enough. So I'm gonna give you a little time to start two. Sound good?
Hey, you know, Harvard,
Yeah.
I do love learning about financial panics, like, especially some of the very looking ones, like right when stocks like became like, because, oh my god, the amount of just insanity, and just no one saw this coming.
See, to be honest with you though, they never do.
They never do. We never look.
I would say there's You see that insanity? Insanity. That's not so right. That's pre-corporation, so
That's like incorporating.
that's the thing, we talked about, if I remember, I did some special talks to Lamania.
Yeah.
Good story.
But that one.
Yeah. I'll do it quickly. Think about that. Pre-capitalism.
That's. I can make so much money.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing is, you go back, they did the same thing with Romans. It's your Roman Empire. Yeah, so it's funny that we just keep doing the same stuff. See you tomorrow. If I peanut butter toast sandwich is not, you call it. Remember right now.
I'm not going to.
Huh?
I'm not going to.
I would have to take your lunch, but it wasn't here.
Lunch.
You didn't have a lunch? Why not?
I feel like making a bubble.
Oh, you know, I know. Main map of Italy. I have this. Italy. 14, got it. Oh, I'm still recording. I recorded everything today.